Good morning and welcome to the daily cyber briefing for Friday, the 4th of October. I'm Stephen Ritchie. There is a vulnerability in the Lightspeed cache plugin for WordPress that allows a stored cross-site scripting, that is a stored cross-site scripting vulnerability, can lead to privilege escalation, data theft, so on and so forth, the usual kind of things. It exploits the plugin's vary group functionality, which is some functionality that controls cache variations based on user roles. By using specifically crafted HTTP headers, it's possible to inject content directly into the WordPress admin panel, and then, frankly, that gives the attacker the ability to do all sorts of things. It has been addressed in Lightspeed version 6.5.1, which corrects the input sanitization issue, which is the core of this vulnerability. So definitely recommend that if you are using Lightspeed is one of the most popular caching plugins in WordPress, so it's out there a lot. By the way, it's been tracked as CVE 2024 47374 in case you want to look up some of the details. But patches are available. As always, just as a quick reminder, tell me if you get bored of this one, but WordPress plugins, you can set them to auto upgrade, auto update. But in my experience, it is worth going in and checking periodically that they actually have done that, because I've seen numerous occasions where, despite you setting the auto update features in WordPress, it doesn't actually do the update. And that goes for themes, WordPress itself, plugins, you name it. Always worth a periodic check to make sure that it is doing what you expect it to do with regards to updates. Okay, so there is a very good write-up now available about the Perf Control, PERFCTL, Perf Control Storm, malware. It is a piece of malware which has been around for a couple of years, but it is at the more stealthy end of Linux malware. It's been known about for a couple of years, possibly a little bit longer, but there is historically been very little done in the way of analysis on it. It is a complex piece of malware that manages to spread itself around Linux systems in such a way that, firstly, it's difficult to detect, and secondly, it is very resistant to being eradicated. It seems to have the ability to pop back to life and also restart under many circumstances. So there are some Linux anti-malware solutions can identify it. I think the indications are that those solutions may have varying abilities to actually eradicate the threat. So it's a very good write-up if you want to understand or get an insight into the mindset of attackers writing sophisticated malware. So a couple of articles that we've linked for this. Originally came across this on GB Hackers when I was looking at stuff this morning. However, just prior to the going live with the briefing, the site appeared to have gone down. Now, I don't know whether that's just a quirk or whether they're suffering from some issue, but I've also found a very similar article on Ars Technica, which we've linked to this, gives a good overview, also links out to the original piece of research, which is very detailed and very much worth having a look at. So there are some potential indicators of compromise in the articles, so it would be worth having a look and seeing whether any of this stuff, you feel like any of this stuff is worth pulling out and putting into your SIEM in order to alert for the potential existence of this piece of malware. It is, as I say, multi-layered, quite cleverly put together, tends to use a very innocent sounding file names that are then spread prolifically around the operating system. So it is a little bit difficult to identify and to get rid of. But yeah, be aware of that one. So there's been research. It's always good to see research into, well, what is actually going on in the world of cybercrime, cyber security at the moment. So there's been some research into what adversaries are doing. And it appears that, now bearing in mind, of course, that the research will be based on a certain data set, and you've got to take into account where the data sets come from, blah, 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 all the rest of it. However, there's a reasonably good piece of research that has demonstrated that attackers are using offensive security tools like Cobalt Strike and Metasploit over 50% of the time. Now, this comes from research from Elastic, so it's based on things Elastic has seen. Now, given the fact that Elastic is ubiquitous these days in security monitoring, I think we can be reasonably confident that even if they're out by a bit, it is not going to be wildly wrong. So stuff then to think about is that legitimate tools used for illegitimate purposes crop up in over 50% of malware alerting. The malware families that we've all heard of, things like Mirai and whatever, tend to be down in the few percent. So Mirai around 2%, that sort of thing, these days. So, and that's partly because of the work that's been done to limit the spread of some of these botnets. Also, the research indicates that nearly 50% of Microsoft Azure failures were tied to storage account misconfigurations. And 45% of Google Cloud users failed checks related to BigQuery, which was specifically down to a lack of customer managed encryption. S3 failed 30% of checks, specifically around a lack of MFA being implemented. So you can see that if you start joining the dots here, cloud misconfigurations, which are well known, combined with off-the-shelf offensive security tools like Cobalt Strike and Metasploit, are accounting for a fair percentage of cyber attacks at the moment. So worth thinking about. Firstly, if you're running a cloud environment, I absolutely appreciate that it is difficult keeping on top of the security of cloud environments. We do our best in TSC to keep on top of things, but it's surprising how quickly, let's say, Google or Amazon change settings in their cloud environments. These things are not always well communicated, so there may well be changes that affect a particular security posture that go on without you being aware of it unless you go back in and check. So cloud misconfigurations isn't necessarily down to people not knowing or caring. Some of it, I think a fair amount of it, is down to the way it works has changed, but nobody has been notified, or nobody's aware, or nobody's looked yet to see that it's changed. And then the use of common tools is unsurprising and has been going on for a long time. Common tooling, though, tends to be quite noisy, and I think it's fair to say that you should be alerting on the use of these common tools, and think a bit about where you would expect this stuff to be cropping up. Now, I know that some security teams have got a tendency to try and catch out their organisation by doing things to see what happens, which I think is a very bad idea. I'm much more along the lines of use those events to train the infra and whatever teams around what might happen, and be in a position where either that there's a particular test going on, or you shouldn't be seeing stuff in your environments that are using these particular tools. So yeah, worth having a think about. And then finally, I came across an article this morning in Cybersecurity News, which very much actually goes back to the concept of deal with the cybersecurity basic hygiene before you start really getting into the complicated and sophisticated stuff. Yes, for a cyber professional, it may be a little bit boring, but this particular article talks about ways that you can identify phishing or other malicious emails. It's the sort of stuff that makes good, a good cyber blog for your organisation. Hopefully, you're sending out weekly, monthly, or whatever little hints and tips around how to stay safe. But it covers things like suspicious subject lines. Especially things that are creating a sense of urgency, like subject lines like urgent, account suspended, action required, security alerts, blah blah blah. Generic greetings, dear customer, dear username, that sort of thing, or overly personalised things which look to be overly familiar, but are not things that. It's not a particular greeting that you would expect somebody to use. Obviously, suspicious domain names. So if you look at the, one of the things I think is a really quick and dirty and very effective way of filtering out the majority of poorly formed phishing. If the name of the person that appears to have, the name in the signature of the email doesn't match the name in the from field, well, that doesn't feel right to me, does it? And equally, if the from field has got some dodgy domain in it, well, that doesn't feel right to me either. It also points out some things like high-risk words to look out for: money, investment, credit, free, those sorts of things. And also recommends that you hover. So most mail clients these days give you the ability to hover over a link rather than to actually click on the link. Although that's actually, as an aside, I have not researched or not looked into what actually happens when you hover over a link. So yes, it gives you a preview of the page, but in order to get the preview of the page, can things be executed through the page? Do you see what I mean? Is it no, you haven't done the clicking on the page, but it's still rendering that page for you. So is it potentially, could you potentially get malware through hovering over a link? I don't know. I think it's considered to be more safe to hover over a link and have a look at something than it is to click on it and have a look at something, unless of course you've got a nice sandbox environment in which you can do these sorts of things. And it talks also about some practical tips for email safety, so not sharing personal information, using multiple email addresses, by which what they really mean is, don't do work through your personal email. Don't use your work email for personal things. Don't use your personal email for work, and don't use your work email for personal things. Yeah, keep them separated. And then the absolutely obvious one: keep your software updated. Patch. Right, that is all from me for today. Hope you've had a good week. Hope you